Welcome to this training on self-advocacy and informed choice. This is for providers and direct support professionals, and it's sponsored by the New Hampshire State Department of Health and Human Services. This course is designed for providers and direct support professionals who work with people with disabilities or acquired brain injury, and also aging and physical disabilities in populations. There's a few things that we want to make sure that we're covering in our training today. By the end of the training, you should be able to identify the difference between informed choice and choice. You should be able to describe the legal and ethical responsibilities of a provider and direct support professional and how they align with self-determination and autonomy. You should be able to identify how to advocate and provide strategies to encourage self-advocacy skills. Also, we'd like you to be able to define how to ensure that a person's choices are included in their person-centered service plan. Also, we will be covering the design of supported decision-making agreements. And finally, we hope that you'll be able to state ways and provide strategies to overcome some of the obstacles that you'll experience to ensure people's choices are honored. So self-advocacy and choice is about empowering people to make decisions about their lives, services, and supports. It promotes dignity, self-determination, and quality of life. It uses person-centered practices to ensure that the person's preferences, needs, and values are at the center of service delivery, and it encourages the person to express their goals and preferences. Medicaid is the source of funding for all of our services in the community that we provide offer as provider agencies and direct support professionals. And specifically, the types of Medicaid is referred to as home and community-based services Medicaid funding. That funding comes with some rules that are established by the federal government. And those HCBS rules, home and community-based services rules, specify very clearly what a home is and what a community is, what it means to access and be part of the community. And those roles are very specific in terms of self-advocacy and choice. There's a lot of choice that is guaranteed and must be in place and provided for a person who's supported through our organizations as provider agencies. For example, the person make choices about where they live from among several options that are desirable. They choose who provides services. They choose you as a provider agency. Again, that is a choice process that involves selecting from a variety of desirable options. They must have a role in choosing who joins them if they're sharing their home with other people. They also make choices and have control over being able to eat when they're hungry and who they visit with, where they visit with. Choices around how they arrange their rooms, that is decorated according to their own style and preferences. They also have a right to choosing how they direct their services. They're in the driver's seat when it comes to putting together a service plan, whether it's an individual service agreement or a care plan. And the case manager is there to support them at the level they need to make that happen. So these are all rules that are critical in enforcing and ensuring that we continue to have HCBS Medicaid funding for our services. These are some of the rules that have been updated in New Hampshire that govern what we do as a provider and that are in alignment with the rules around Medicaid HCBS services. These were recently updated because the HCBS Medicaid rule was updated in 2014. We sometimes refer to those updated rules as the settings rule. So you'll find those if you're doing a web search to find out what Medicaid HCBS funding updates are. Look up the settings rule and they'll tell you the information, and think about how self-advocacy and choice is really reinforced in those rules. They'll show up in these New Hampshire rules as well. You can see these HEM rules, which have been updated, HEM 310 on the rights of individuals in community residences, HEM 503 on eligibility in the process of providing services, HEM 504 specifies in how provider and provider agencies are operated. HEM 505 describes the establishment of and operation of area agencies. HEM 506 around staff qualifications and staff development requirements. HEM 507 on community participation services. HEM 517 on Medicaid covered home and community-based services. And then finally, HEM 518 on employment services. Take a look at each one of those and look at how self-advocacy and choice is supported and reinforced. We make decisions throughout our lives. Decision-making is something that we start early and we get better at over time. It's actually something, if you reflect back on our own lives, some of the decisions we made earlier in our lives, we wouldn't make again. We've changed, we've learned from that. So it's good to think about decision-making as a skill, something that needs to be practiced, that we start early and we get better at over time. Natural part of the human experience to be making decisions and needing to practice that over time. It's very natural to be supported in how you make decisions. We don't make decisions in isolation. We always turn to other different kinds of resources. When I think about the decisions I made earlier in my life, I wouldn't make them again. I took some risks that I wouldn't take later in my life. But I also learned from experience from the mistakes I made. So making mistakes is very natural and an important part of the learning process. When I think about when I purchased my first car, I relied on a lot of different kinds of supports for that. I turned to family members. My dad gave me advice on who would be a good car dealer based on his own experience. So someone who had been in my shoes before, that's an important source of support. I also looked at peers. What did my peers feel would be a good choice in deciding which car to have? I looked at information about what would be good car, repair records. So a lot of different sources of support integrated in different ways. And then I've got better at that over time. I didn't require the same kinds of supports, but I still look at different ways in order to make a decision. So what we really want to be focusing in on and making those decisions is that what's available is informed choice, not just vanilla or generic choice. We want more opportunity. We want to make sure and promote as many opportunities for a person to have power and control over their lives and be able to make choices and decisions about what happens in their lives. They're in control, they're in the driver's seat. But that doesn't mean just any kind of choice, because the choice is actually in its basic form. A person makes a choice with just making a decision between available options. But if a person is making a choice without fully understanding the implications or consequences, that's a problem, right? Imagine if we are, you're deciding that you've been invited to go out to a restaurant with a couple of your friends. They text you, they give you a message, say, hey, we're all going out to dinner tonight. But we've come down to 3 restaurants, and here's the 3 names of the restaurants. And come join us. And which one would you like? What is your choice? And you've seen the name of the restaurant, but you have no idea what's on the menu. You don't know any Yelp reviews. You haven't heard anything about. What do? They say, which one do you want to go to? What do we tend to do in that situation? We'll say, you decide. We give up our power, we give up our control because we don't have any information in order to make a choice. It's a dilemma. It's not really a choice. When we get to the restaurant, let's say we arrive there and it's a huge menu and we have to read through the whole thing. It's 25 pages long. And the wait person comes back several times to fill our water, give us a little more breadsticks, and keep on asking us, have you decided yet? We feel a lot of pressure. What do? We grab something randomly and just try it out. Those are kind of dilemmas that we don't want to give to people, right? That's not what we want to promote. What we would prefer to promote, what we want to make sure is available, And as providers or direct support professionals, make sure that we're playing an important role in this, is informed choice, making a decision based on the full understanding of all the relevant information, including potential risks, benefits, alternatives. It requires access to clear, accurate, and unbiased information, as well as the time and support needed to process and consider that information. So what are the key elements of informed choice? One is information, providing the person with the facts and options in an understandable way. In that second part, the second piece is understanding, ensuring that the person comprehends the information. So again, is it available to them based on their own particular learning style? If their learning style is not reading, then it's in other forms. Whatever is understandable to the person. Thirdly, voluntariness, allowing the person to make the decision without pressure, without coercion. And finally, support, offering assistance if needed to help the person evaluate the options. So those are the key elements: information, understanding, voluntariness, and support. Informed choice is particularly critical in areas like healthcare, or choosing a course or adult education, or choosing services, choosing a provider agency. Informed choice, are all those four elements present? Or choosing a case manager. So informed choice empowers the person to make decisions that are significant and personally relevant to their life, and it emphasizes dignity, independence, and respect. So your role as a provider is to give the person options and to provide education on those options so that they can make their own decisions. Their choice should be one that reflects their values, interests, and desires. And education on the choice should be informative, but not leading. So your responsibility is to carry out that role in a way that stays accountable, that really maximizes, looks at every opportunity you can provide choice, but also making sure it's an informed choice. So we have to be accountable to that, and documenting when we're providing it for some of these major decisions. So let's look at some of the steps that you can either take as a provider, or where you can open up resources and opportunities for the person. So we can promote self-advocacy by helping the person to learn what their rights are. You can't exercise your rights until you know what they are, right? So there are rights that a person has with regard to disability rights. There are rights with regard to workplace accommodations, right? Rights as a New Hampshire citizen or a citizen of the United States. So what are the books or videos or workshops that can be available to learn about those? Self-advocacy is a personal capacity, something that we want for all of us and our loved ones and anyone in our lives and the people that we support. It's also a movement. It's a state movement, it's a national and international movement. So there's a lot of organizations that produce these kind of training resources about your rights. Some of them are self-advocacy groups. So they're presentations by peers, and there's a real emphasis on simple language. So no complicated words and things that are difficult to access, accessible in terms of simple language. Another way that we can encourage and support self-advocacy skills is just really be thinking about how we can support someone create learning moments, teaching moments, where if you're hearing somebody form an opinion or start making a decision, is encouraging them to express it using an I statement. I'm hearing that you're feeling this way. You can say that as, I want to do this, or I feel this way, or I have decided this. Oftentimes the people we support have been deprived, they've had diminished life experiences where they really haven't been encouraged to assert their opinions, so they've not practiced in using the phrases. So support them in a safe place where they can assert and make those statements. Talk to them about how they can make those statements with others as well. We also might be, we want to think about how we can intentionally increase the different opportunities throughout the day and schedules and activities and choosing meals, all opportunities to advocate for themselves, decide and express their desire of what they want. These can start with simple situations and expand in terms of complexity over time, but it helps build confidence. You start with the small and build up. You got to start with the small things in order to feel stronger and stronger about the larger decisions in your life. So think about those as intentional opportunities for the person to have all those elements of informed choice, where they have the information necessary in an understandable way, the time to process it. It means pausing and helping people understand what the consequences are and then help them follow through. We also want to make sure that there are communication devices or information that are helpful to them in evaluating options, that those are in multiple formats. But also different ways of communicating your opinion or experiences, internal experiences externally, can happen through practices like journaling, where you're writing your thoughts down on a piece of paper in a way that other people can see. Art can also be an expression of self-advocacy, expressing your emotions through painting or drawing. So think about how a person can be encouraged to experience different art expressions as an outlet and as an ability to assert, this is how I feel, this is who I am. Also, we want to encourage moments of celebration, no matter how small, in the person's journey along self-advocacy. So we're creating and fostering a supportive environment where mistakes are seen as learning opportunities. And we want to pair people with other mentors, opportunities to really connect with other people who have walked in their shoes. So think about peer groups or affinity groups, self-advocacy groups that they can be a part of. People First of New Hampshire is an organization that's been at it for several years. They're looking for members and opportunity to connect together. Really valuable to know that someone has been in your shoes before and can help you guide you through and be a mentor in that process. You also can think about how problem-solving skills is a matter of thinking about some of the big decisions in your life is really a series of smaller ones that's easier to deal with. Some of the big decisions in our lives, sometimes they're overwhelming. You hear people say, whether they're friends or families, that say, I can't think about that right now. That's too much. Well, what can they think about? When you're making a decision about a medical process or a medical intervention, it's a series of small decisions. So we just have a meeting with a doctor next Tuesday. We're going to ask them these questions, and then then you can make a decision of what happens next after that. So let's just take this step by step. So that's an encouraging and supportive role that a provider, a DSP, can provide. There's also some apps and tools that can be used online to promote self-advocacy around goal settings or reminders or way of communicating. So there's different methodologies that we would recommend on the online systems, electronic systems that can help with this. So self-determination is the person's right to participate in and approve of the design of their own personal support system, and to fully engage in their communities and to make choices in their daily life. The philosophy of self-determination underscores the importance of maximizing their control over their life. There's also this concept of the dignity of risk. Dignity of risk refers to the idea that all people, including those that we serve as providers, have the right to make their own choices, even if those choices involve some level of risk. It emphasizes autonomy, self-determination, and personal growth over excessive protection or paternalism. It's a concept that recognizes that taking risks is a natural part of life and is really essential for learning. It's essential for independence. It's essential for a sense of living a full life, a sense of well-being. So we know that some decisions and choices have risks associated with them, but when provided with the right information, the person can make a better decision or understand the potential risk involved. So we always, always, always want to respect their decisions. Our role is to provide information, help the person understand the options in a clear and accessible way, respect their preferences, take time to learn about their likes and dislikes and their communication style to really, truly support decision-making. To use communication aids. The person may need communication supports like visual aids or simple language to make decisions. And also create opportunities, create environments where the person can explore their preferences and make choices, even if the person is not regularly offered those options historically. And finally, feedback. We're helping the person reflect on the decisions that they've made, right? Recording and letting them know, you made that decision. I noticed these things. How did you feel? What was that like? Would you do that again? What might you try differently? Or what would you like to do the same? So those are all ways of reflecting and learning from past experience. So the individual service agreement or care plan is the written details of the services, activities, and resources required for the person to achieve their personal goals, right? To create the services, we ask what services and supports do you as a provider need to offer or make available to the person in order to accomplish those goals. It's not what they cannot do. It's about what supports they may need to achieve the goals in their plan. And with regard to the design of activities, as a provider, we ask what can be done or what goals can be built on in the activities that the person prefers. If the person likes something, they're most likely to repeat it or do it again. And in terms of gathering those resources, we ask as a provider, who can help or assist? What can be offered? Where can the person go to get supports to achieve their goals or their plan? Who can help the person make an informed choice about a goal or a service? What steps does the person and their support team need to create so they can start working on that goal? So the person's individual service agreement needs to be centered on them and the information gathered from them. As a supporter, as a direct support professional, you may take part in, but ultimately it's their plan. So you might not provide all of the supports and services in the plan, but your assistance as a team member, if you were chosen by the person to be part of that team, is certain to go a long way in helping the person achieve their outcomes and their goals. So the important part of a person's individual service agreement should have a focus on what's important to them and also list the things that are important for them. At times, you'll need to assist them in making sure there's an understanding that must be a balance between the important to and for. But you can see here that what's important to a person, including their likes and dislikes, what they prefer, their strengths and gifts and hopes and dreams, their ability to make decisions, and also those things that are important for them that fall under the health and safety area, the things they need to address in order to deal with balanced diet, exercise, healthy living, and thinking about what supports they need for that. Those things are placed in the individual service agreement, but it's present in their life in a balanced way. So the person chooses who they'd like to be part of their team and creating their individual service agreement. Their team has the responsibility for assessing and documenting different things like their personal choices and preferences, their significant health care, mental health, or behavioral health needs, and the related maintenance needs, and their safety and financial skills. The team then translates this into information that goes into their goals and objectives. The plan results in outcomes that maintain or change their services supports to reflect what's most important to them and most important for them in a way that's balanced in their daily life. So supported decision-making, it's a process that allows a person to make their own choices about their lives and with the help of a trusted network of supporters. Through supported decision-making, a person identifies what types of decisions they want help with. The person chooses others that they trust to help them understand, make, and communicate those decisions. And those people might include trusted friends, relatives, neighbors, or coworkers, or you as a provider, volunteers, or other community members. These are the people that the person wants to share their voice and choice with. A written supported decision-making agreement can help the person legally designate which supporters will help them make which decisions. It can be an alternative to guardianship. Supported decision-making is always flexible in how it is applied from one person to another, and even how it is applied to the same person over time. So it's where somebody can establish, let's say, with somebody who wants to get support for financial decision-making. It's a way of them specifying specifically who they would like support for what kinds of decisions. And it starts with a different set of questions rather than say, who needs to step in and make decisions for them. It's an alternative question, which is what are they capable of doing, and where does support need to step in? Where would they like that step in? So imagine, for example, that somebody has started work, a new job, and now suddenly they're getting, they haven't had this before, but now they're getting a paycheck for $1,200 every 2 weeks. So now they have $1,200 and they've never had that much money before. And actually they haven't had their own cash before. And so this is a new set of decisions they have to make. Rather than say, ask the question, who needs to step in and make financial decisions for them? We ask the question of the person, how much money are you capable of making decisions on your own? You really don't need any help at all. Let's say for that $1,200, they're pretty good at spending cash in the pocket up to $25. So they can go down to the Irving station or CVS and spend $25 any way they want. And that works really well. And the rest they've decided they'd like to put that in budget in other areas. So they're independent, they're on their own. But after $25 or up to $500, they actually would like to get the help of their brother in making that decision. So brother is available and access for $25 to $500. But also the plan then is very specific in terms of how that support is provided. So is brother available through text? Or should the brother be is the best way to provide that support that that person would like is for brother to actually be sitting down with them. So sitting across the table or next to them and processing and thinking through. Then those decisions are made with brother. And let's say after $500, that's big decision making, right? Access somebody from a local bank who they've decided that they can sit down with them every month and learn some financial planning skills. So it's different kinds of support for different amounts, different decisions related to finances. I think about my own mother in this kind of situation where she was in assisted living. She lived till 97. But when she was around 93, we noticed that she was having difficulty with remembering, processing, but she was she was a retired nurse working for 35 years for Dartmouth Hitchcock. And she was capable of making decisions under the right conditions. So we decided rather than, again, moving reflexively to who should be making decisions for her with power of attorney, we decided that my sister would be the best person to help her with that decision making. She was a retired nurse as well. She lived on the other side of the country, but the plan that was put together was if a nurse or a doctor had information they needed to share with mom while she was processing that in order to make that decision, that my sister would be involved. Then there's the question of how that support is provided. So how was specified as whenever those occasions occur, my sister would be called, she'd put on speakerphone, they would hear the information at the same time. Then my mom wouldn't make a decision even then until after they had a follow-up call, processed it a little bit. Then mom made a decision, and that was written down in a way that would be shared with doctors and nurses. So it was mom's decision. She needed that extra support in terms of recording her decision, remembering her decision, and sharing it in a way that maximized her advocacy with others in her medical assistance. We also decided that with mom that we knew that there was conditions under which she made her best decisions. And so those were the times decisions would be made. So none of the medical decisions would be happening after 12 o'clock because she tended to be more forgetful at that time. So when she was refreshed in the morning, that's when those decisions are made. So that's another thing that can be specified in a supported decision-making agreement. What are the conditions that are best for making any kind of decisions? All determined by the person and written down in a way that is chosen by them, the control of the W's, when, where, why, and how supports are provided, not taking away those decisions from the person. On the screen here, you see a nice screenshot of a newsletter from the fall of 2021 from the New Hampshire Disability Rights Center. There are great resource for information on supported decision-making. Here's a comparison. Again, historically, our tendency has been to move reflexively to questions about guardianship. Who will do replacement decision-making? But you can see that with guardianship, it's a process where a judge is approached with an evaluation of what are the deficits around decision-making, presented to the judge in support of a plan where somebody else will become a guardian and that person becomes a ward. And that can't be changed once that's established unless you go back to the judge, go back into court. But supported decision-making is in control of the person. They identify who provides supports, why, and how. And it can be changed if they disagree with the final decision. They take advice, but the decisions are theirs in the end. So supported decision-making can be created for any types of decisions or important aspects of someone's life. Might be a good for applying to those elements under the HCBS rule, right? Making decisions about choosing a provider. How about a supported decision-making agreement for choosing a provider agency or choosing a case manager? Certainly for health decisions, those are areas that would be very helpful for a person where they might decide to have a supported decision-making agreement, or money decisions, financial. So honoring the choices of the person that we support needs to become a priority at all levels of our system of care. In order to do so, we need to acknowledge and address the barriers that exist to that, and think through strategies to eliminate or reduce them. So one barrier is to just address the importance of raising awareness through trainings and rights. So there's some shift in mindsets we have to address. We have to address improved awareness, creating communication bridges, improving advocacy skills, overcoming resistance from the caregiver level, managing risks, importance of monitoring and evaluating over time, helps us address any kind of resistance going forward, and also helping with community partnerships to really make sure that there's others who are enrolled and participating in helping the person address any obstacles. So the approaches that we've talked about already is around raising awareness and training. We've also talked about making choices fully understandable and accessible. But we want to think also about streamlining any of our policies and procedures that might limit flexibility or choices, or put the onus on the person who is supporting them, and perhaps asking questions and making them accountable for anything that might go wrong. If we're documenting and really ensuring that informed choice is happening, then that should be protections for a person with regard to whether or not how they were involved in helping the person make important decisions. So we need to advocate for funding models that prioritize individual choice-driven services, right? Like self-directed services. We need to offer workshops and discussion groups for caregivers on the importance of honoring autonomy, even if choices differ from their expectations. Helping caregivers understand that honoring choices doesn't mean abandoning safety or care standards, but rather finding a balance. We want to advocate when we see the need for housing or job opportunities to ensure that there's a genuine range of options for the person. And we should think about forming partnerships with community organizations to make this happen. We can educate all stakeholders on how to balance safety with the right to make decisions, even when there's a potential for failure. We need to develop plans that minimize harm without undermining autonomy. And then regular check-ins with the person and their support team to ensure their choices are being respected and adjusted as needed. We need to involve independent advocates or third parties to monitor that choices are honored, especially in environments that might be highly structured. We always need to remind ourselves that there are other ways to communicate. There are multiple ways to communicate. and that don't involve spoken language. So when a person's communication style is slightly different from ours, it's all about watching the body language, listening with our eyes as well as our ears. How do they say yes or no with their posture or pace of movement? Sometimes we need to check with others who may know the person better or just may have noticed things that you haven't yet. We can incorporate the whole team in clarifying the questions about what the person's preferences are. This can improve our understanding or assist in making our educated guesses a little bit more accurate, right? Some of the key responsibilities come directly from state and federal laws. So providers have to comply with the New Hampshire revised statutes, the RSAs, particularly those governing developmental disabilities and services like the RSA 171A, which outlines services that people receive. Providers must ensure that a person receives services in accordance with Medicaid guidelines, including the HCBS or Home and Community-Based Services regulations, which dictate the types of services available to the person. Providers must advocate for the rights of person as defined in the Americans with Disabilities Act that prevent discrimination and ensures access to services, education, and employment. As a provider, you have to adhere to the HIPAA rules. Those are the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, and they ensure confidentiality and privacy of the person's information and listen to their decisions around who they should share their information with. Service providers are mandatory reporters, as are any citizens in New Hampshire. But as a provider, you must report any suspected abuse, neglect, or exploitation of a person to the appropriate authorities, as mandated by law. Service providers are required to be active participants in the person-centered service plans for people, ensuring their preferences, choice, needs, and needs are central to the service planning process. Plans should be updated regularly and reflect their evolving needs and their evolving desires. Service plan providers ensure that a person has access to necessary services, including healthcare, education and housing, job training. You also provide and help coordinate these services and ensure the delivery of timely and appropriate interventions. Service providers ensure that the person or their legal guardians are fully informed about their rights and the services available and any changes to the service agreement or care plan. Consent should be obtained for services, treatment, and interventions. Service providers have a legal obligation to advocate on behalf of the person, ensuring that they receive fair treatment and access to services. This includes helping them and their families navigate appeals process, if necessary, when services are denied. So some of the key responsibilities that you have as a provider are based on professional ethics. Service providers are ethically bound to respect the dignity, rights, and self-determination of the person that they serve. You have to honor their choices and preferences, even when those choices may differ from your professional recommendations or other professional recommendations. Service providers must obtain the confidentiality of the people that they serve, sharing information only with people or entities that they authorize and in accordance with their preferences. Service providers should advocate for the rights and best interests of the person, ensuring that their voices are heard in all matters concerning their care, treatment, and services. Ethical providers empower the person to make decisions about their lives and actively support their inclusion, participation, and belonging in the community. Ethical service providers must demonstrate cultural competence and sensitivity to the diverse backgrounds and needs of people. This includes respecting their culture, their linguistic and personal differences, and ensuring equitable access to services. Service providers are responsible for continually improving their knowledge and skills to provide the highest quality of care and support. This includes staying informed about legal changes and best practices and new resources that could be made available to the person. You should engage in ethical decision-making, remaining transparent, honest, and fair in all interactions with the person themselves, their family members, and other service providers. Service providers must avoid situations where personal interests or relationships could compromise the quality of service delivery or create a conflict of interest. Service providers ensure that the person has access to appropriate services, advocating for rights, maintaining confidentiality, promoting self-determination, and adhering to both state and federal laws. Your work should be guided by a commitment to respect, empowerment, and protection of the person while ensuring their inclusion and dignity in the community. Service providers need to be closely aligned with the principles of self-determination and autonomy. These values emphasize the rights of the people to make their choices, their own choices, and control their lives and participate fully in their communities. So let's explore how these responsibilities how they support self-determination and autonomy. First of all, person-centered service planning. It's the foundation of self-determination and autonomy, because it puts the person at the center of their own service plan. Providers must ensure that the plan reflects the person's goals and their preferences and choices, rather than imposing predetermined or one-size-fits-all solutions. This aligns with the autonomy of the person by respecting their right to make decisions about their life and the services they receive. By facilitating and supporting a person-centered approach, service providers help empower a person to actively participate in the decision-making process. This, in turn, fosters greater self-determination. A key responsibility of service providers is to advocate for the person's rights and to ensure their voices are heard. This advocacy directly supports self-determination because it ensures that the person is able to make informed decisions and is not excluded from choices about their care or daily life. Service providers empower a person by providing information, guidance, and support to make informed decisions about everything from daily activities to long-term goals, ensuring that they feel confident and supported in asserting their autonomy. Self-determination requires that a person has the ability to make choices based on full understanding of the options available to them. Informed consent is a process that ensures that they understand the implications of any decision regarding their care or treatment. Service providers are legally and ethically responsible for ensuring that the person understands their rights, options, or any potential risks, and that they provide consent voluntarily. This respects their autonomy by ensuring that they are in control of decisions about their own lives. At the heart of self-determination is the right of the person to make choices about their own lives. Service providers are ethically required to respect the wishes of the person, even when those choices may differ from what you may have an opinion on, or what case managers recommend, or what service coordinators might recommend. As a service provider, you carry out your role in a way that supports autonomy by honoring the person's personal preferences in where they choose to live, how they spend their time, and what kind of services or supports they receive. You ensure that the person is not coerced into decisions, but instead is allowed to make choices that reflect their values and their desires. Self-determination involves the ability to live and participate in the community as independently as possible. Service providers have a responsibility to connect the person with community resources that promote independence. Resources like job training, education, social activities, healthcare. Your role is to carry out this responsibility, and that includes ensuring full access to services and facilitating community integration. In this way, you help the person exercise their autonomy in their communities. This not only supports their independence, but also ensures that they're seen as active members of society. Protecting a person's privacy is an essential aspect of respecting their autonomy. If a person is to make autonomous decisions about their lives, they must feel secure in the knowledge that their personal information will be kept confidential and shared only when necessary and only with their consent. Your role is to uphold the confidentiality standards under the HIPAA guidelines that we mentioned before, to ensure that the person has control over their personal information and can share it on their own terms. This protection fosters trust and allows them to make decisions about their lives without fear of unwanted exposure. Self-determination emphasizes the person's right to make decisions about their life, and autonomy is fostered when service providers ensure that the person is not only involved in decision-making, but is also equipped with the skills and resources to make informed choice. As a service provider, your role includes making sure that the person has the tools and supports they need to make decisions. This may include providing educational resources, helping them understand their options, and supporting them through the decision-making process in a way that aligns with their personal values and desires. Self-determination is directly connected to the ability to exercise basic human rights, including the right to be treated with dignity and respect. Ethical service providers advocate for these rights and work to ensure that the person is not discriminated against or treated as if they're incapable of making decisions for themselves. The provider role here is to ensure that a person is not denied access to services or opportunities based on their disability, and that they are treated equitably. This upholds their right to make choices and participate in society, reinforcing their autonomy and self-determination. The legal and ethical responsibilities of service providers in New Hampshire directly aligns with and supports self-determination and autonomy by ensuring access to person-centered service planning, promoting informed decision-making, respecting personal choices, and advocating for their rights. Service providers empower people to take control over their lives and live as independently as possible. This holistic support not only ensures compliance with legal and ethical standards, but most importantly, it fosters the values of dignity, independence, and self-directed living that are at the core of self-determination. So setting long-term goals with the person that you serve requires a thoughtful and person-centered approach that considers their strengths, interests, and needs. So we follow these steps, and these should help with that process. First of all, we work to build trust and rapport. We spend time understanding their personality and their preferences and communication style. We create safe environments where they feel comfortable expressing themselves, those learning moments that we talked about and support moments. We keep a person-centered approach as the focus in all the work that we do. We highlight their abilities and interests as the foundation for goals. We use life maps, goal boards, or drawing activities to help them visualize their aspirations, their vision of a good life, their preferred future. So we want to think about goal setting as a process. We encourage the person to think about what they'd like to achieve in their future, like living more independently or learning a skill or hobby or working in a specific job. We ensure that the goals align with the person's ability while we encourage their growth. We break long-term goals into smaller, achievable steps to build momentum and confidence and celebrate when the goal is met. We make clear communication a priority. We use clear and jargon-free language and visual aids to explain concepts, right? We restate their ideas to confirm our understanding. We check with them. This is what I'm understanding. Am I right? Tell me about it, or show me. We involve family members, other caregivers, or advocates to provide additional insights while keeping the person's voice central. And we don't forget about how daily life experiences themselves can be a source of information, right? So we relate goals to activities that they already enjoy participating in. We use everyday routines as a stepping stone towards larger aspirations. Self-determination can be reinforced when we're setting our goals. We can encourage decision-making at every stage, from brainstorming to action planning. We want to emphasize the person's role as the leader of their own goal-setting process. And when we start planning together with the person, we have key tasks in mind. We identify who will provide support and how, whether it's a family member, friend, or professional. We connect them with local organizations or programs or tools to help them achieve their goals. And you'll want to monitor progress along the way to make adjustments when needed. We want to recognize milestones and celebrate to boost motivation and self-esteem. We want to reassess our strategies if obstacles arise, and we want to adopt new goals as needed. We want to schedule consistent follow-ups to really track progress and make adjustments. So it really helps to keep a growth mindset, teaching the person that setbacks are a natural part of the progress, reinforcing their ability to learn, grow, and achieve over time. And we want to keep reminding each other about how each goal can bring them one step closer to experiencing their good life. We want to discuss how their goals will lead to greater independence, fulfillment, or other outcomes that they value. We want to visualize success through stories and examples, role models, mentors that can be in place for them. So the bottom line is the person's needs and wants must be the biggest part of all decision making. So the person should have a chance to live a life that encourages growth, learning, and participation in new activities. We want to be able to make decisions and choices. They need to make those decisions and choices and be involved in the decision-making process, even if they have a guardian. So here's some resources that'll help you with some of the concepts, learn a little bit more about the concepts covered today. You can see that supported decision-making is covered, and there's some nice resources with some legal entities like the American Civil Liberties Union and the American Bar Association. There's a great resource around supported decision-making, the website National Resource Center for Supported Decision-Making. That's been up for several years. Can let you know about what's happening across the country and some ideas for application. And some great self-advocacy groups now at the national level, the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network and the Center for Youth Voice and Youth Choice. And here's some great booklets and reference material that's been created by the Bureaus of Developmental Service and the Bureau of Adult and Aging Services. There's a nice rights and responsibilities booklet there, and also a booklet on New Hampshire Care Plan and partner resources. And here's some references for the rules that we talked about, the HCBS guidelines. And the Disability Rights Center has that information where I showed you that screenshot on their newsletter about supported decision-making. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you have a good day.